Good afternoon. This is the House Appropriations Committee. It's Tuesday, May 19th, 2026. It's about 1:20 in the afternoon. And we are going to listen to a couple of bills this afternoon with a break in between. First one is a miscellaneous ag bill, S323. And we have folks from the Ag Committee. Welcome. And Ledge Council and Joint Fiscal Office. So Bradley, is that? Yeah, welcome. You've never been to our committee before. Come take a seat and why don't you walk us through the bill? Then looks like there's an amendment too.
Yes.
So welcome. You haven't been here before. Typically, we don't need to hear all the details of the bill. So we kind of look at it, the high level, 30,000 foot key points, and then you can take us to the money, which is why the bill is in our committee.
All right, I'm Bradley Showman with the Office of Legislative Counsel. And does the committee prefer that I share my screen?
Yeah, that's great.
Great. And I will share my screen. So this is S323, an act related to miscellaneous agricultural subjects. And this is a logger bill, so I will go through the sections very quickly and then flag the sections where there may be a fee provision as I go through. So on page 1, section 1 is related to milk purchasers and who can request a hearing with respect to a dispute between a purchaser and a purchasee. Okay. The second section is at the bottom of page 2, farm to school program contracts. This is changing the farm to school program from a grant only program to permit the Agency of Agriculture to execute and enter into contracts to also administer this program that provides education for school kids about farming.
Okay.
And we're on page 4, and the pest control repeal, compact repeal and pest exam requirements. This may have a small impact that Ted will talk about. But basically in section 3 on line 10, Vermont was part of an interstate compact regarding pest control measures meant to control pests that were interstate. And because pests don't respect state boundaries. However, this compact was defunct in around 2013 or 2014 due to a change in their IRS tax status. They can no longer continue and have the funds. And as far as I understand it, we haven't been paying into the funds since then. And this bill repeals the provisions in our law that kept that alive. But that fund has been defunct, and this would repeal that. Section 4 on page 4 talks about pesticide applicators. And so basically this section, if we scroll down a little bit, we're on page 5. Essentially what this does is it lets someone retake the pesticide applicator exam as many times as they would like. Currently, the limit is 3 times per year, but then it also removes the exam fee requirement for state government, municipalities, and public education institution applicators. And so to get a pesticide, to be able to apply a pesticide, you need an applicator license. And that license requires a fee and an exam and things of that sort. So this section deals with those fees. We're on section 5, seed law changes on page 5. And this section I make some essentially just technical corrections at this point to seed law changes. And so section 5 on the bottom of page 5 here just does some conforming language here, and it does add wildflowers to the definition of flower seeds. Section 6, some more conforming changes, and it adds bulk bins and bulk display as requirements for seed labeling. And then section 7 does some more conforming changes and makes clear, adds some clarity language about paying for fees and things of the sort. It doesn't change the fees or alter or amend them in any way. It's clarification language. Section 8 is the consolidation of the Vermont Agricultural Credit Program. So VCAP, actually it's VACP. I shouldn't say VCAP. That's Incorrect, but some people refer to it as VCAP. And VEDA, VEDA. And so VEDA administers the VACP, the Vermont Agricultural Credit Program. Currently, it's set up such that there is a middle entity called the Vermont Agricultural Credit Corporation. And so it's the Vermont Agricultural Credit Program at the bottom, the corporation in the middle, VEDA at the top.
Right.
And so this section essentially transfers the administration responsibility for the VACP directly to VEDA and moves and conforms those statutes.
Okay.
There are changes to the law in this section, but they're conforming to VEDA's authority to administer the program. So no big changes to the program more broadly.
Okay.
And so I'm going to scroll until I get to our next sections. Sections 11, 12, 13, and 14 are conforming. These are on page 15. These sections conform changes because we moved BACP in the title. And so these sections are conforming changes to other laws, and we're scrolling still more to hemp oversight, which does relate to fees. So I'll spend a little bit more time on those sections.
What pages, where is that?
And I believe it is page 18.
Okay.
And so hemp, and so the overarching issue here is that the federal definition of hemp is changing such that more hemp products could be considered cannabis if the federal definition change goes into effect on November 1st, as it is currently scheduled. So you have hemp products, you have cannabis products. They're the same plants, but different potencies. And hemp products are not illegal in interstate commerce, and cannabis products currently are illegal in interstate commerce. And so there are changes to definition of what is hemp and what is cannabis coming at the federal level. The biggest change is it is changing what strain of THC a hemp product will look at. So it's different strains of THC and the amount of THC in the final product. And so currently, hemp is determined by the amount of THC in a product based on a percentage of a weight. 0.3% of its total weight can't be THC. Currently, the proposal in federal law is there cannot be more than 0.4 milligrams per total weight of a final product of THC in a hemp product. If there is, it will be considered cannabis. And so there is a problem with more hemp products being brought into the scope of what is cannabis under federal law. So that's the background of what is changing. And so what this portion of the bill does, this will be sections 15 through 20, is transfer the authority, the oversight authority from hemp, from the Agency of Agriculture to the Cannabis Control Board. And so the Cannabis Control Board can regulate what is hemp and what is cannabis more readily. And so we have a definition section on page 19. I'm scrolling through these fairly quickly.
Just to back up for a sec. So
Yeah.
we're moving hemp to the Cannabis Control Board.
That's correct.
Did we ever have it there? I'm trying to remember was that talked about? I'm checking with Pepper here. Okay, good. Was it ever there and we took it away and now we're getting it back, or I can't remember what we did.
James Pepper, Chair of the Cannabis Control Board. In 2022, we turned the authority of the Agency of Agriculture to create and maintain a permissive authority
Okay,
to an optional authority.
okay,
From a mandatory to a permissive.
okay,
And you gave us jurisdiction over hemp-derived products,
okay,
never over the processors. So
Okay.
now no one is regulating the processors, and that's a problem for the processors. They
Yeah.
need, for the purposes of banking, insurance, entering into business contracts, they need some state agency that they're registered with. They can verify that they are a legitimate hemp company and not a cannabis.
okay. So you guys are gonna take that over,
Just the process.
the processor. Okay. All right, so, thank you.
And so the definition sections on page 19 discusses the definitions that are largely brought over from federal law, with some exceptions. First, where the word grower is being replaced with the word producer, or being used interchangeably with the word producer, to line up with how it's as federal law. So someone who grows the hemp is a producer. A processor takes that product and turns it into a consumable and then a product is an item for sale. And
And as a question.
Yeah, can you define that again? If it's no more than 0.4 milligrams?
so if
Definition.
at the federal level, that will go into effect on November 1st unless something changes, and something may. But it is 0.4 milligrams of THC or more in the final product. It will be considered cannabis at the federal level. And if it's considered cannabis at the federal level, it would be prohibited by sale in interstate commerce.
So if it's less than 0.4 milligrams, that's hemp.
It is hemp, that's correct. And then it also cannot have more than 0.3% THC by weight.
So that means if it's less than 0.3% of THC, that's hemp.
That is hemp, but it also cannot have more than 0.4 milligrams total in the final product. And so we can kind of imagine how the math might work out on larger products and smaller products, smaller versus larger hemp products and things of that sort. How that could be problematic in terms of taking what was a hemp product under one set of definitions and making a cannabis product in another set of definitions.
So it's a two level
Yeah,
qualification.
yeah.
Thank you.
And so the definition section, and there's just to flag in the definition section here, but this has on page 20, so there are some potential issues with hemp products when you're taking a hemp crop and processing it into a hemp product. The process intermediary, so the thing that you are kind of working with to make your hemp derived products, might have a higher level of THC in it than is allowed under federal law. And so this bill carries over the definition in current law, but it allows an authorized hemp processor to keep that product. It's still considered cannabis, so that intermediary is still considered cannabis and they can keep that product, but and then turn it into a hemp derived product with the appropriate levels of THC content. So they're allowed to keep the product. And the agency can make rulemaking about what to do and how to sell that product if they can at all. And so that will come later, but there's an issue with it's kind of these process intermediaries and things of that sort. It's fairly complex. I'm happy to slow down and re-explain that.
I don't.
Okay.
We need to know all the.
Okay. And I'm happy to speed up too. And so hemp is still an agricultural product. It has to follow agricultural rules. We're on page 21. There's hemp registration and licensure. So hemp producers, processors, and hemp products that have more than 0.4 milligrams of THC or more have to be registered with the Cannabis Control Board annually. This section sets forth some criteria that the board may deny those registrations from the rulemaking authority. This rulemaking authority is largely copied from current law with some exceptions. I'll go over those exceptions. The rulemaking gives, we're on number 11, page 24. The rulemaking gives the Cannabis Control Board the option to define craft processors as a class of small businesses with different needs and risks, and then exempt those processor licensees from the requirements of the subchapter, including, and we'll see on number 12, including waiving the fees that are associated with processing those things. And number 13 could also exempt certain product categories from the requirement to register under this chapter. The board shall also, we're on the top of page 25, the board shall also establish requirements for the licensure of hemp and hemp-derived products and process intermediaries, and then regulate the use of processing facilities and equipment to permit people to process both hemp and cannabis. And so using the same equipment, but making rules about how you would go about using the same equipment to prevent cross-contamination of those items. Testing and enforcement on page 25, copied largely from current statutes, and I will skim past this, but it can order, they do have the authorization to stop a sale of a product and order the destruction of crops if they don't meet the definition of hemp. There's some administrative penalties section. Under current law, the administrative penalties are defined of up to $1,000 per violation, and individuals could receive a penalty of up to $5,000 per violation if the individual failed to comply with corrective action on the violation. In this proposal, here, the administrative penalties are defined. And so the board will set those penalties, but they're not specifically defined in statute as they are in current law. We're looking at page 27, 858, section 858, the fees. The fees are a little bit of a change from current law. So for producers, i.e. people who are growing the hemp product, the hemp plants, processors and products, $50 fee for producers, $500 fee for processors, and a $75 fee for products. These are annual fees that individuals will pay annually unless the Cannabis Control Board waives those fees for craft processors. And the Cannabis Control Board can establish longer durations and registrations over and prorate that over the course of more than 1 year. Under current law, the fees are based on a per acreage, per poundage fee that is processed or grown. So the fee could be lower under current law or higher under current law. The highest it can go under current law is if you're farming 50 acres or 50,000 pounds, the fee is $3,000. The lowest it can go if you're farming half an acre or less than 500 pounds, the fee is $100. And so there is a little bit of a range in current law, and this changes that up a little bit. And then section 17, I believe this is a conforming change to current law just because we're moving the statute. So it's changing a citation. Section 18 on page 29, the same issue, changing a section on the statute, and section 19 changes the Cannabis Regulation Fund to enable the Cannabis Control Board to collect fees and deposit them into their special fund. And section 20 is sales restriction. This adds new civil and criminal penalties for unauthorized sale of for the sale of unregistered hemp and cannabis products. These restrictions are modeled after restrictions that are on unregistered tobacco products. So people selling these products into the state or in the state that have to be registered could have a civil or criminal penalty. The criminal penalty is imprisonment of not more than 5 years or a fine of not more than $5,000 or both. The civil penalty is up for $5,000 per violation. Both penalties are per violation. And the state can disgorge profits made from unauthorized sale, the sale of unregistered products if a court has determined that that has happened. That's it for hemp. Moving on to this natural resources section, if there are no questions. So the Natural Resources Conservation Council would like the ability to mortgage property, and the current statute is ambiguous on whether they can. So this provision, this section amends a portion of law that makes it clear that they can mortgage property to purchase property and take out a mortgage to purchase that property.
I don't actually know who they are. I've heard that name recently in the last couple of days.
Yeah. So they're kind of a quasi-municipal entity. They do some regulation on resource management, and there's bodies or entities throughout the state that kind of manage or reviewed like resource management and things of that sort. And so they just want the ability to be able to kind of mortgage property to house their staff. Section number 22, the CAFO permit working group. The CAFO, so CAFO stands for Confined Animal Feeding Operation. And so in 2025, Act 67 changed oversight of CAFOs to give the Agency of Natural Resources the obligation to ensure water quality standards for these farming operations. It's usually up until that point, it was the Agency of Agriculture, but the federal EPA had determined that the state of Vermont was out of compliance with federal water quality protection, and as part of an understanding to get into compliance, this was changed such that the Agency of Natural Resources oversees the CAFO permitting process. And so Section 22 would establish a working group to provide advice and recommendations for the implementation and transition to the CAFO permit required under section 1353 of this title. The study goes out to set out who is on. So we have farmers and agricultural representatives, individuals from the environmental impact communities and things of that sort. They get technical assistance and meet quarterly starting November 1st, 2026. And they make their reports annually. So this study group would be ongoing and make their reports annually to the agriculture committees and then the committees on environment on both the Senate and the House.
I remember funding a bunch of money to get this, to make the transfer happen, but the transfer hasn't actually happened yet to go to ANR. So I wonder where all the money went. I thought we did like $850,000. Yeah, Rick Nelson, do you know what it's been used for?
Yeah, Richard Nelson, Representative Nelson, House Agriculture. They're still on the process. Of course, some of the money was used for this mediator we hired, the stakeholder group.
Yeah.
And he was good. He was really good. He wasn't $850,000 good, but he was really good. And then they're in the process now, I heard, of starting to merge their computers together so they can share information.
Yeah.
And I could speak more to that a little bit. We feel that the environmental groups and the farmer groups feel that we want ANR to hire a auditor or consultant for the first 2 years to help them. So there's consistency in inspection. So that all the inspectors are looking at the same thing, coming up with the same conclusion. And both parties want this. Both parties asked for them to hire a consultant and they said, well, we need money for a consultant. And we said, well, geez, you had $850,000, you haven't expended it all yet. You could use that to start with your consultant. It's for 10 inspections a year. And also ongoing training for both agencies to go and get trained.
And so thank you. And so this bill on section 23, as Representative Nelson was previewing, is that this bill calls for the Secretary of Natural Resources to contract with a third-party consultant to assist the Secretary in developing standards and procedures used by ANR and the Agency of Agriculture when inspecting, and then come out and do some sample inspections. But this section does not call for funding it. So there's no appropriation tied to this section, and section 24 makes this section contingent. So section 24, the duty to implement section 23, which is the confined animal feeding operation training on inspection, is contingent upon appropriation of funds in the fiscal year 2027 from the general fund to the Agency of Natural Resources for the specific purposes of hiring a consultant to consult on how to perform the inspection. So this is already contingent funding. And then we have the effective dates. The hemp sections are on passage and everything else is on July 1st.
Okay.
And that is the bill. Oh, and there was an amendment. I can go over that as well.
Oh, yeah. Why don't we look at the amendment, Ways and Means?
And the Ways and Means amendment is very quick. So we're looking at draft 3.1 at the very top. And first it amends the cannabis special fund section just to clarify that where hemp was placed in the statute, we needed to add some clarification language that we actually correctly captured it.
Okay.
So that's the first amendment. And then the second amendment here is about fees reporting. And so you'll recall that the Cannabis Control Board can waive fees for craft processors And so if they do that, actually, they have to give a summary of all fees that are in effect during fiscal year 2027, including any of those waivers, reductions, or alterations to the hemp fee schedule as set forth as we described a moment ago, summary of all the revenue, and a comparison of fees in other jurisdictions, and an analysis of the policy or trends that might affect the viability of the fee amounts, and any recommendations for how the hemp fee schedule may be adjusted in the future. And then the third instance of amendment here adds a sunset for that provision that allows the Cannabis Control Board to waive or reduce licensing fees for craft processors. And so it sunsets that ability on January 1st, 2028. And so that ability is sunset because if they put those fees into rule, they have to get statutory authorization to do that within a year. They have to get statutory authorization to do that, or they may choose to not do it at all, and then that will sunset. And the reason that this bill is considering that sunsetting provision is because those craft processor fees are going to be contingent on whether the federal law actually changes. And so there is a big question mark hanging over the heads of folks who are regulating this industry right now, because there is some movement at the federal level to make those changes not go into effect. And if they don't go into effect, the Cannabis Control Board has indicated that they might not alter the fee schedule or kind of create a regulatory framework about craft processors and things of that sort when examining how to best regulate hemp, because it might not be necessary to kind of get into that level of detail if the federal law doesn't change in the way that it's currently slated to change. So the short of it is that there is a lot of uncertainty from the federal level on what is hemp and what is cannabis, and the Cannabis Control Board has asked for some flexibility. And then this amendment would take away some of that flexibility in a couple of years once we have a better picture of what that federal framework will actually look like. And that's the amendment.
Okay. Question, Wayne?
Not on the amendment, back on.
That's okay, we got the bill and the amendment.
Back on seeds, wildflower seeds and the seeds.
Page 3 or
We
something.
got a lot of, 3 stars, meaning things are missing.
Great.
Are there adequate protections now? How do they go about making sure that the seeds being distributed are free of noxious or invasive seeds? Is there a testing program that does that?
Yeah, there is a rule that the Agency of Agriculture does. They're actually updating it now. And but essentially the Agency of Agriculture has rules and procedures in place for not only testing, but restricting the sale of noxious weeds. And so it will current law lists categories A and category B. The rule is being amended to make different categories 1, 2, and 3 about certain plants that are deemed noxious and harmful to the environment if they're allowed to propagate. And so some of those have complete and total restrictions on their sale, and some have exceptions. But the Agency of Agriculture regulates that area extensively.
So samples go to the lab, the ag lab.
Yeah.
Somebody there checks for the seeds and make sure they're not contaminated.
Yeah, and they also respond to complaints too. And so if an individual notices that someone is selling a noxious weed or an invasive species that is listed, so it has to be listed in the rule, and the rule will be changed, assuming that it's authorized by LCAR and nothing changes. The rule, will allow the Agency of Agriculture to have some more flexibility to determine what is and is not an invasive species or a noxious weed. They're changing the language from noxious weed to something else, and the words are escaping right now. I apologize, but they regulate that extensively.
Nice to get rid of that wild parsnip.
Oh, yes. We will not declare it state weed or something. Okay. Don't leave the room, but I'm not seeing other questions for you, but we want to get Ted up here to talk about the fiscal note, or there's 2 chairs, you can both sit up there, it's fine with me.
Okay. Ted Barnett, Joint Fiscal Office. Thank you. Drilling down into our fiscal impacts, relatively minimal across the board. The section 4 changes to pesticide examinations. It would extend the $25 fee for second and third examinations to the first examination, in emailing back and forth from the Agency of Agriculture. That was done because a lot of folks were not showing up to the first examination because there was not a fee assessed to that examination. So it's to encourage compliance. I don't see a lot of changes in revenue, but potentially when the Agency of Agriculture would see it based on the number of examinations people have taken. The second piece is the fee schedule that's connected to regulation of hemp by the Cannabis Control Board. There are really two universes. As Bradley talked about, federal law moves hemp into a market where products would be limited to, we'd be limited to an intrastate market for hemp products. And so the number of processors, products, et cetera, that would be licensed under this scheme would be relatively small, and the revenue would be pretty minimal to the Cannabis Regulation Fund. However, if there was some sort of change in federal law where an interstate market was allowed, there'd be many more products that the control board would be registering. And so this is kind of a best guess rough estimate at this point, in connecting with Chair Pepper, that would increase the estimate of potential fee revenue under the hemp fee schedule to $90,000 in annual revenue. So it really depends under current law and the trajectory that we're on, really more of a minimal look, but there's always the possibility that federal law could change. I also wanted to comment on, even though we don't forecast revenue impacts from fines and penalties, I like to indicate the routing because they're always different depending on the fund and the type of penalty. So the fine in section 20 for selling unlicensed hemp products, that fine would flow to the general fund since a fine is more of a criminal matter, minus a $12.50 administrative fee that goes to the court penalty special fund. And then the statute for the Cannabis Regulation Fund explicitly indicates that civil penalties do flow that are in the regulation of cannabis, and now with the regulation of hemp, that would flow to the regulation fund. So yes, that's routing, but we don't forecast any revenue impacts. It would greatly expand the scope of our office, and we like to assume that everyone's going to behave.
And I think the reason it came to us was this working group.
Correct. So there is a working group. It is an extension, I think, of a previous entity that was providing information on how to, or guidance on how to implement regulations on CAFOs. The bill does not specify a per diem compensation. Did find testimony from the agency that indicated that they at least, I don't want to speak for them, but at least don't directly oppose this working group. The Committee on Agriculture didn't include per diems for this group. If per diems were provided, it looks like there are 17 members, a lot of farmers from all over the state who would be providing input, and then also some folks who work on water quality. But they would
12 members, right? I'm looking on page 30.
Oh, did I mistake the number of members? I tried to count on my fingers.
Farmers, 3 ag technical service providers, 3 reps from environmental advocate community, and the executive director of conservation.
Well, then I should change the 17 to 12.
Yeah, because you know what I bet you did is you did the 5 and then you did the A, B, C, D, E, and that would be the extra 5.
That would do it. Good eyes, good catch. I'll fix that. In which case then in that case, it's even $200.
So they're gonna pay, they can just pay out of their own budget, basically, the agency of ag, if they're gonna pay any per diems, or maybe they won't pay any per diems.
No, there's not.
Rep Nelson, did you even talk about per diems?
The environmental groups that, when I sit up there, I'll explain to you, we're working together in good faith for the first time in I don't know how many decades. The environmental group said they get paid whether they're there or not. The farmers decided they weren't gonna do it for their retirement benefits. And they were gonna do it because that's what needed to be done, and that's how farmers are. As far as, technical service providers, basically the same thing with them. They get paid whether they're there or not.
Okay, so everybody's happy.
We felt like we didn't need any compensation to do the right thing.
Excellent. Excellent.
And then we'll also say a few words on the parts of the bill that would specify requiring the Secretary of Natural Resources to contract with a third-party consultant to develop standards and procedures used by both ANR and the Agency of Agriculture when inspecting CAFOs. It has a contingent appropriation. I know the Committee on Agriculture spent some time thinking about the amount of money that might be associated with that appropriation, but in the end, they decided to make it a contingent appropriation, recognizing their work was kind of happening a little bit behind where the budget was in its process.
Any questions for Ted? Thank you. Rep. Nelson, is there anything else you want to say that we haven't already talked about?
The hemp piece, it was a big lift for us. We also worked really well with GovOps, is right, half of that language.
Yeah.
And they did a great job helping us, and Cannabis Control Board has been very good to work with us on this, and we all admit that we're heading into the Wild West and don't know because of the Battle of Kentucky. Rand Paul and
Yes. Oh, because of what's going to happen at the
Mitch
federal.
McConnell is the one that changed this language
Okay.
to protect Kentucky bourbon industry. And Rand Paul, Kentucky is one of the larger players in the country in the hemp industry.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that.
Rand Paul is trying to protect that end. As far as Vermont's producers of hemp, as Chair Pepper said, just about every operation in Vermont could be considered craft. There might be one or two that wouldn't be craft, because we are so small compared to Kentucky, Oregon, and Washington State. As far as fees being earned, remember, if it is made with a hemp derivative, CBD, CBG, CBM, CBC, and IGHF.
WCAX.
But if it doesn't have any THC, which they can make those products without THC.
That's the
It
big thing.
can cross state borders.
Yeah.
And it could be revenue generated. And our hemp industry really looks forward to a lot of this to protect our industry and to keep products where they belong, because there are hemp derived products coming into the state that aren't it's not really clean.
Mhm.
There's high levels of THC in some of them, but they come in under the hemp.
Yeah.
And this will give the Cannabis Control Board a chance to really bear down on this and
Right.
keep products in their lane where they
Yeah.
belong. The seed language, the reps question over there about noxious weeds, yes, we did talk about that quite a bit. And there was a lot more language in it, we took a bunch out. It protects the consumer, so the consumer gets what they're getting. Yet they know what they're buying. And I'll give more on that when I give my full discussion.
Okay. Great. Wayne.
The consultant, can you just give us a little description of what you have in mind in terms of qualification of the consultant you want to hire?
Okay, so on the CAFO language, again, as I said earlier, the environmental groups and the farmer groups actually sat down and had very productive meetings. We all realized the other side wasn't wearing devil horns and carrying a pitchfork. And we're working together for the first time in decades. And I'm hoping that this continues to go forward for the better of Vermont agriculture and the Vermont environment, although I think we've been doing a really good job. And they'll admit we've been doing a really good job. 296 incidents have been turned over from the agricultural department to A&R for them to look at, and 0 actions have been taken by A&R, and they could have been writing CAFO permits all along, and they haven't. That was the reason for the lawsuit. That's why the EPA has now said A&R is the delegating authority and you need to do your job. That's the long and short of it. So we want a consultant because we want consistent inspections. And A&R said it would be $300,000. We're talking 10 inspections. If it's $300,000, I want to be the inspector.
Yeah.
I want to
That's
be
what
the
happens when
teacher.
people don't want to do it.
So who would you get? Somebody from?
They had a person come over from New York already last year and do a couple.
Cornell?
No, not Cornell, a private individual that used to work for EPA. EPA is in state right now. They've done 1 inspection, I've heard. They're doing 10 inspections this year with A&R. And agriculture is invited if the farmer and ask them to come along. I think it would be great if they all did them together. I really do. But they didn't on the first one that I heard, which really surprised me. I know the farm, I'm really surprised that they weren't there, but they were asked not to go.
And the results of these inspections generally were positive, on the positive side, or?
Oh, yeah, yes, yeah. You know, and they're gonna. Anyway, there's a lot more in the weeds on this, but
Sure.
we believe A&R has the funds to start this. Although this doesn't go into effect until July 1st. The inspection season ends in October. You're not gonna inspect under 3 feet of snow. I mean, they're welcome to inspect my farm under 3 feet of snow, but. If it doesn't go through now, maybe we do something with the BAA later on, and it won't be $300,000. Would it be $100,000 for 10 inspections? Maybe 50, I don't know. But it's gonna be something, but it's not gonna be 300. And they could start it now and then come back and ask for a backfill. They've got a clean water fund money, a lot of it. Anyways, that's all. I've probably taken enough of your time. Any other questions?
I think we're good. We're not going to vote today.
Okay.
I also talked to your chair about some language that the administration wanted to be sure got in some bill related to the old S60 that we did way back when. There was some special extra language they wanted to put in. That was the special fund for farm and forest.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a sentence or something, but at any rate,
Okay.
so I don't know where that's gonna go, but we're not gonna vote on this today, but I think we understand the bill, and it's pretty, from our perspective, it's virtually nothing, but
Yeah.
there was a working group, so that's all we need to know in terms of reporting it. And committee members know who they can talk to if they have other individual questions.
Myself, Chair, anyone in our committee.
Yeah.
I'll tell you though, just to give you a heads up, it is gonna head to a committee conference, and
Okay,
because Chair Engels may not agree with the good work we did.
well, thank you for all your good work, we appreciate it.
I thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. Okay, committee, we are gonna take a break. We're gonna have cannabis bill, which we're also not gonna vote on, but that's at 2:30. Were you just up on the floor by any chance?
wasn't.
Mike? You were not, okay. There may be a roll call. I have no idea what's going on. They're debating a bill right now, so we'll see what's happening, but we'll go up live for now and plan to be back